Why is it that people just seem to like pass him by and not take any notice of him at all? That seems very suspect, very suspicious, very suspicioso. So he's approaching Mouse, and suddenly it seems to be out of nowhere. There's the bully who, over time, over the course of this year, this school year, has been behaving more and more erratically. Suddenly, as they're about to have this meeting, Bully appears and accuses Mouse of being the ghost that is haunting Nan's room. And in a very short amount of time, he is beating Mouse, just going to town, going absolutely insane, like crazed, insane craziness. And Nan is just kind of frozen a couple feet away, just watching this happen in total shock. He didn't really expect that anyone else was going to have a similar accusation, and now he's watching this kid be really badly beaten. And after that, kind of a losing time kind of thing, he's so in shock that he just doesn't really recall how that gets settled and who comes to help, or does anyone come to help. All we know is that later, Nan ends up going to recover from shock. His family is not super wealthy, so he gets invited by RB to visit his family's vacation spot, which is kind of this resort thing by a mountain lake, and it's all so fancy. He decides to take RB up on that offer because he's lost. So we find out that Mouse has actually been beaten to death, and RB attempts to introduce Nan to a lot of different temptations to get him to relax or to get him to be more like himself. Definitely succeeds in getting Nan to indulge in some, basic high school rebellious teen stuff, like a little drinking here, a little smoking here, do. RB takes all of that teen rebellion stuff way too far, and Nan does not go all the way down that spooky road. There is definitely some stuff he indulges in on this holiday break, and he learns a lot more about RB and how really cold that person is. So after the holiday break, they go back to school. For a while, Nan is just, let's get through the motions, let's do this, I just need to get out of this place, it's weird. Things are pretty much the same, except that a kid was beaten to death, and people are definitely on edge about that, and they think it's very odd that it was a kid who was not friends with anyone except for Nan, and Nan is the one who lives in the haunted room. So there's definitely a big flare-up of versions of the stories about this haunted room, which eventually leads Nan to want to investigate further, but all of his investigating isn't really getting him anywhere, even though it's a nice distraction. Eventually it gets to the point where that's really all he does in his spare time, and even RB, who has been interested in him in the beginning, the novelty's worn out, like he's sick of it, he doesn't want to talk about this anymore. So Nan is pretty much left alone. The more he looks into it, however, he does start to get more and more of a sense of who the ghost could be. Not who they were or why they died, but more of an emotional, kind of mental picture of who this person could have been. He begins having really vivid dreams that you almost want to call hallucinations, but like, you're probably asleep, so that's not real, that's just a dream. A really creepy, weird, vivid dream. And one night he has a dream where he's running out to an abandoned train track bridge that it's just decrepit, it's fallen apart, nature has reclaimed it. He runs out and he imagines he's being chased by a teacher, possibly because of hearing all of these stories, or often having to do with a student or a teacher. Maybe that's just because it's the first two versions he heard. So he imagines he's being chased by a teacher. As he gets to the bridge, he stops to allow the teacher to catch up with him. Several days later, we discover that the younger teacher's body was found. He's not dead, but he has fallen off of the bridge, and he's suffering from, severe hypothermia. It's cold. He's suffering from severe dehydration. He's been out there a couple days. He's got some broken bones, so he's definitely not in a fit state and might never become fully healed from this incident. And people kind of assume it's because, okay, earlier in the year we had this horrible violent tragedy with 2 students, and the teacher clearly had some feeling of blaming himself and tried to end his own life at a place a little removed from the school campus. It's at this point where we see RB kind of return into Nan's life, and eventually RB decides to tell Nan the truth about the ghost story, which is this. RB and Mouse and Bully and a couple other kids were at the school earlier on. They used to do their rebellious teen thing over by that bridge, the train bridge, decrepit old crappy train bridge, and it was sort of a secret, but sort of not. The older teachers didn't really want to have anything to do with it. They're just like, well, they're kids and they're bad kids and then blah 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 blah, we don't care. It's a great school. But the younger teacher's like, hey, I have youth on my side. I'm gonna find these kids and they're gonna be better. I'm gonna make them better kids. So he goes to like bust these kids who are hanging out at the bridge. They see him approaching and everyone kind of freaks out and tries to run. One kid actually does accidentally fall off the bridge, and like the teacher years later, he doesn't die. In fact, he is able to get up and walk. And everyone kind of feels like, okay, you guys learned your lesson, that was a scary incident, you learned your lesson. So they help him back to his room, everyone goes to bed, convinced that like, you know what, it's fine. It's fine, it's all fine. There won't be any like long-lasting consequence from this, it's totally normal. A few days later, it's discovered that the boy who fell actually did receive some trauma and ended up passing away in his room over the course of the time that he was left alone there. And it wasn't so much that everyone came together and said, hey, let's make up a story. It was more, no one found out he had passed away for a few days, and when they did find him passed out, they kind of assumed, okay, he must have done something to hurt himself, because it's a tough school, it's a difficult situation. All of these kids are one step away from prison, so it's not super uncommon that someone would try that. And because none of them said anything the night that that accident happened, it's just easy for them to not say anything at all. And that was when the whole idea of the room being haunted kind of came about, and no one's really sure who started the rumor. It could have very well have been another kid not involved in the incident at all who's like, oh, well, I always heard that room was haunted. Or it started out as a very bad joke that became kind of an urban legend, which always has the sense that it's been around forever because they're all so familiar, they're all so connected, that you get the sense, oh yeah, that's definitely been around for, you know, hundreds of years, why not? Some of the kids involved in that incident have graduated, moved on from that school, some of them have transferred to other locations. Mouse became incredibly racked with guilt, became kind of this social pariah that really no one cared about at all, whereas Bully turned all of that into rage and was eventually driven absolutely insane by it. And at this point, RB is the only one left from the original incident at that school, and he's like, you know what, everyone else kind of went nuts. I guess I should tell someone, like, maybe there is a haunting, maybe there is a weird curse, like, everyone else is gone now. So that's how he ends up coming clean to Nan about the whole incident. And I gotta pause. Oh my god.